what a wonderful time for you to be a role model for the trans community to say, hey, you know what, I could be a positive role model and start my own federation. Um, we've offered to make a separate category. We've said this all along for the last 2 years. Even Strongman Corporation created a separate category for Audrey, and he basically said, no, sorry, F you, not going to do it. Instead, he actually spewed hatred and harassed me and other competitors, made threats about, as we saw, pissing beside them in the washrooms, very unhinged behavior. And, they could have just made a positive experience about it, been a positive role model for the transgender community, and they did not.
Well, folks, a little bit of good news on the Transanity front. Powerlifter Ann Anders has been suspended for 6 months by the Canadian Powerlifting Union for threatening people online. By the way, don't let the name throw you. Ann is not a woman. He's a biological male who doesn't even make the slightest effort to appear female. But he pretends to be female, you see, and that means this grifter gets to compete against real female powerlifters. It's disgraceful and totally unfair. Oh, and knock me down with a feather, Anne routinely wins, setting records in the process. Now, why would that be? Oh, yes, I almost forgot. She is actually a he, and he has no business competing against real women in the first place, for obvious biological reasons. But Ann doesn't tolerate those who call him out as a cheater, and his method of debate is all about uttering threats and engaging in harassment campaigns against several women and sports officials.
Why is women's bench so bad? I mean, not compared to me. We all know that I'm a tranny freak, so that doesn't count. Standard bench in powerlifting competition for women, I literally don't understand why it's so bad.
But finally, even the woke joke Canadian Powerlifting Union has had enough, issuing Adorable Annie a suspension. Too bad it's not a lifetime one. And joining me now with more on this development is London, Ontario-based powerlifter April Hutchinson, someone who has long been a target of Ann's vitriol.
Hey, unnamed Ontario lifter that I will never name because that would be bullying, because, of course, you think you understand our words and you try to use them against us, but we all see through your bullshit. I'm talking directly to you. There is a reason why CSIS has classified your people, and yeah, I mean your people, as terrorists.
Well, first of all, thanks for making time for us, April. And, for those who are not familiar with your story, we should tell people that you were originally suspended by the CPU for 2 years, merely for pointing out the obvious, that Ann is a dude and a cheater. How does that warrant a 2-year suspension? I know it was subsequently lowered to 1 year, and yet this guy, who is actually threatening people, April, only gets 6 months.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know my story, it started back in 2000. Well, actually, I started speaking out in 2022, so it's actually been 2 years that I've been speaking out about and specifically competing in the women's category. So, I was issued a 2-year suspension for merely just stating that Ann is a biological male. That's basically that statement right there, calling Ann a male on the Piers Morgan show, is what got me a 2-year ban.
I am the one being punished for speaking truth, yet he can mock females and say, call me a bigot, incite hate, and nothing's being done about that. But I'm the one being silenced by my federation.
A two-year suspension is equivalent to someone that gets caught doping or cheating within the sport. So it's a pretty severe penalty. So like you said, Ann basically got I would call it a slap on the wrist for. There's a long list of things that Ann got away with over the last 2 years, from death threats towards myself and Premier Danielle Smith from Alberta, to a harassment of other members of the CPU, for doing inappropriate things at the events. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I don't know if you have that comparison chart that I sent you, but I mean, there was a whole slew of things that Anne got away with, and at no time did the CPU discipline him. So.
It's amazing, April. Death threats. I mean, to me, that meets the benchmark of criminal charges. You can't just, say to somebody or go online and profess death or harm. And so I wonder where the police is on this file. But, it just goes to show you this person is accommodated, starts winning these competitions. And I've heard of a sore loser, but Anne seems to be a sore winner. And I think this makes the case, April, I really do, that with so many of these men pretending to be females and wiping the floor with real females, I think it comes down to mental illness, not just on these bogus competitors, but also on the people who aid and abet them, i.e. the sports federations that are going, yeah, it's okay. He's a male by every definition, but we're going to look the other way and pretend he's a female. What say you, April?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, that's what's happening. That's a prime example. Like, punishing me for 2 years for literally speaking out because I love my sport so much. I just want fair competition. That's all the women want. And that's all I wanted. And to show that, Anne got 6 months for manipulating. That's one of the allegations too, was that he manipulated the board by saying, you know what, if you discipline me, I'm going to commit suicide. Like, pure manipulation. Like, the comparison that I wish you had that chart you could pull up, because it shows the 2-tier system, the hierarchy that they put transgenders at this top of the hierarchy, that they will basically get away with anything they want. And this is why the Canadian Powerlifting Union is allowing men still to this day lift at a local competition. We just saw a man take gold medal again from women on the weekend, and they're letting them lift at a local level because they want to appease them, so that, for their mental health reasons. They're like, you know what, just let them lift just so to take care of their mental health, but they can't go any higher. They can't go to nationals. They can't go internationally, but local level, that's okay. So you're saying it's okay at local level, but not at international? That makes no sense to me. But it just goes to show that they're just kind of making sure that their mental health is okay. They're playing along with it. It's really absolutely disgusting. And they're promoting mental health instead of actually addressing it.
No, you're absolutely right, April. And why don't we throw a clip this is another one. Unfortunately, Ann Anders isn't a statistical anomaly. There are other gender bender grifters out there in the sport of powerlifting. This person is called Audrey Yun. He was competing in the female category. It's a biological male, and my colleague Drea Humphrey did her very best to get her side of the story. But I guess there's no way to defend the indefensible here. Let's throw to a clip of that right now.
On a physical, biological level, there is an advantage. So what do you say to young girls who want to be in this sport but see something like this and think, I don't have a chance? What about the comment about peeing beside the other women, the other female competitors? Do you think that's okay?
Yeah, so it looks like, she wants to be alone. But if we've got it all wrong, April, there was a great opportunity for this Audrey to explain herself, but she had no words for Drea, did she?
No, exactly. And that's the thing. Perfect opportunity to speak up. And same with Anne. They both had the opportunity. I said this all along. What a wonderful time for you to be a role model for the trans community, to say, hey, you know what, I could be a positive role model and start my own federation. We've offered to make a separate category We've said this all along for the last 2 years. Even Strongman Corporation created a separate category for Audrey, and he basically said, no, sorry, F you, not going to do it. Instead, he actually spewed hatred and harassed me and other competitors, made threats about, as we saw, pissing beside them in the washrooms, very unhinged behavior. And, they could have just made a positive experience about it, been a positive role model for the transgender community, and they did not. It's a very, I'm not going to say a trending kind of behavior, but again, if you compared Anne and Audrey, it's very, similar behaviors, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and of course, the esteemed coach Linda Blade, who's written a book on this issue, she advocates for an other or open category. Whatever you identify with, you go into that particular category and you leave the real female athletes alone. It's all a matter of fairness, as we said so many times, April, with certain exceptions such as auto racing and equestrian. The female and male sex have been divided into separate divisions for obvious biological reasons. It's so funny. We just got through COVID and we were harped at by the usual suspects to follow the science. And by the way, now we're learning the science was kind of made up, like that 6 feet of social distancing. And yet when it comes to biology, they have a very hard time grappling with that science. Why is that, April?
Yeah, I know. It's funny. And it's, and I think through COVID too, that was when everyone came up with the whole saying, just be kind. And that also got us into where the situation we are right now too, right, David? So, but I will say, you have Premier Danielle Smith, who in October will be introducing the legislation. And we have the wonderful Conservative Party in British Columbia, who also tried to table a bill back in April, which got shot down by the NDP government. No shocker there. And basically, it's very simple. The solution to this is basically to make a female-only category for female-only, male-only category, and a co-ed or open. So, that's what Danielle Smith is proposing, or is doing actually in October, and this is what British Columbia wants to do. So, again, it goes back to the separate category, what Linda Blade has said all along. Let's hope that British Columbia, the Conservatives win and gets majority so we can table that bill, and let's get every province on board with this.
Yeah, I think it's called doing the right thing. And when it comes to doing the wrong thing, as we are speaking, April, the Summer Olympics are taking place in Paris. And the other day, I would say billions of normal people saw something so disturbing. It was female boxing. The Italian biological female going up against an Algerian man, getting her nose smashed, had to forfeit the match. It was such a strong blow. At least in powerlifting, it's not males against females, but boxing? Are you kidding me? And April, I remember there was a time in which if a man punched a woman in the face, that was misogyny at best, assault at worst. And now it's being celebrated by the IOC as sportsmanship and diversity and equity and inclusion. This is madness. I guess my question is, April, how many more women have to have their heads smashed in by males in contact sports before something is done, including the feminist movement speaking up, which are completely silent when it comes to this insanity?
Yeah, we are here. We are using our voices. That fight took place this morning. I was up all night. I couldn't sleep. I was there. I wanted to be there. I actually wrote her after Angela. I wrote her a personal letter, and I said, I actually wanted to send her a bunch of my T-shirts and my hats just to let her know I was there for her. And Marshy Smith and I, or Marshy from Icons, we were just bawling, crying on the telephone this morning after, she abandoned her fight after 7 seconds. Good for her, because she's a true champion, a hero to all women, to all athletes worldwide. She should never have been put in that position in the first place. But at the end of the day, David, you know what? It's not up to women to boycott these events, even though we would love for every woman to do that. But we should just not be put in that position in the first place. Men need to stay the heck out of women's sports. That's the main culprit right there. These narcissistic men need to stay the heck out of our sports. And then the IOC, the Olympic Committee, and these federations, these policy board members who actually predominantly are made of men, by the way, need to start stepping up and protecting women. So it should never have gotten to this situation in the first place. So like CPU, for example, the board members, they could easily step up and say, hey, you know what? This is wrong. Like, why don't you even poll the athletes? They've never even put out a survey to the athletes and said, hey, what do you guys want? What do you think is fair? We've got men on these boards making these misogynistic decisions on behalf of female athletes. I think it's completely absurd. So, I mean, they're not even doing their due diligence and even investigating what the athletes want, what the females want. So here we are, putting blame upon blames, blaming the females for this, right? Which doesn't help anything. So, I mean, step it up, policymakers and federations and government, because, you have to protect these women.
But April, respectfully, I am of the opinion that this garbage, this transanity ends tomorrow if one thing happens, and that is the real female athletes take a knee. They say, we're not competing, we're not getting into the court, we're not getting onto the field, whatever the case is. Make a mockery of what is already a mockery, and then it's got to end. And I guess there's some proof in the pudding. I mean, in rugby, we covered the saga of Ash Davis in Fergus, Ontario. Unfortunately, his female teammates, they are so brainwashed and indoctrinated, it's like chickens for Colonel Saunders. But earlier this summer, in Edmonton, there was a female club that was being invaded by a fake female, and just a core group of them, not even the entire team, said, heck, we're not playing, and guess what? He was shamed into leaving. I really think this is what has to happen. I think there's some things more important than competing, especially if it's a contact sport where, let's face it, the safety and the health of females are being put at risk in competing against biological men.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Like I said, I would love for women to step back and boycott. That would be wonderful. But again, it is putting a lot of pressure on the women to do that. Like, it's not up to you and me, David, to convince these, say for the rugby team, we tried to go out there. We had about 6 players that said, hey, help me. I don't have a voice. I'm going to get suspended if I do speak up, right? There's people, even my own board members have said, you know what, if you don't use pronouns, you're going to get suspended. So, look what happened to me. People I know in Canada know my story. They don't want to speak up. They're still using the language. They're still calling men women because they don't want to get suspended like April Hutchinson did. So, I mean, we can't convince them, David. We can hope that they will back out. That would be the answer. But who are we to? And then you have individual sports, like my sport's individual. Then you have team sports. Now you got to convince a whole team to back out. It's just, yeah. I mean, we just have to keep fighting. We just have to keep speaking out. We got to keep wearing these shirts and spreading the message, both men and women.
Yeah. And, April, again, it comes back to one of my original thoughts that at the end of the day, the question arises, who do you have more contempt for? These gender bender grifters invading female sports, or those who are the gatekeepers, the sports associations that are allowing it? And don't give me this human rights garbage. Let's have it go to a real court of law and see what a judge rules, because I've always been under the impression, April, that public safety trumps all. One last question. What is the latest when it comes to April Hutchinson? How long is your suspension there for? What are your hopes and dreams when you get back into the powerlifting sport, April?
Well, I actually really don't know right now at this point. As you know, David, I've lost some weight, so I'm actually really enjoying my weight loss journey. I'm just getting healthy. I'm probably at my healthiest I've ever been, and I'm still selling my merchandise on my website, and I'm still just being an advocate. So I'm basically here. So if there's any female athletes out there on any team within Canada, even the United States, that don't feel like they don't have a voice, please reach out to me because I'm here for you always. I can help you. And I'm basically just being an advocate for fairness in women's sports. And just, I'm still training all the time for powerlifting. I haven't decided yet if I want to go back to the CPU or not. I still have a very bad taste in my mouth. I would like a public apology by them, but my suspension is up November 6th. I still haven't decided if I want to go back to powerlifting.
Well, I know, April, we've spoken off camera, and you've, thought about professional wrestling. Maybe that's an avenue for you. Please make me your manager. That would be a dream come true. And, maybe the acting gig, superheroes are hot right now. You were talking about maybe donning the Power Girl costume, going to Fan Expo, maybe a talent scout there will cast you in the next DC Justice League movie. So these are some doors that are open, and geez, I'd really like to see you in a Power Girl costume, let me tell you that. Anyway, April, thank you so much. I wish you the very best, and hopefully we're getting to a tipping point when it comes to Transanity, because when you see female Olympians getting a beating done to them, that is so against Olympian values. I can only imagine the ancient Greeks turning in their grave. And you keep us up to date with your further adventures, won't you?
Yes, always will. And I told you I did get casted for a movie coming up in the springtime. So I get to be my muscular self. So there you go.
Excellent. I want to be there on the premiere night. So there you go.
Yeah.
April Hutchinson, you keep fighting for what's right, my friend.
All right. Love you guys. Thank you.
April has the temerity to voice her displeasure that biological men are competing in female powerlifting, and the sport is trying to cancel her. Absolutely disgraceful. Please, if you can, go to our newest petition, standwithapril.com. That's standwithapril.com. We're fighting for April. We're fighting for female athletes. We're taking a stand against this egregious woke behavior.